There is a specific day in your financial life that most people never reach. Not because it's out of reach, not because it requires a six-figure salary or a windfall or a lucky break, but because nobody ever told them it existed, and you can't work towards something you don't know you're looking for. On that day, something shifts. Not dramatically, not in a way you'd necessarily notice if you weren't watching for it, but mathematically, structurally, fundamentally, something changes. The money you've already saved starts generating more new wealth in a single year than the money you're actively putting in. Your portfolio earns more than your contributions. Your capital works harder in 12 months than you do. And from that point forward, the equation is permanently, irreversibly different. This is called the crossover point. And the people who reach it don't retire differently than you. They don't look different. They didn't earn dramatically more. They just understood one thing that most people who earn similar incomes never figure out. Wealth isn't built by working harder. It's built by reaching the moment when working harder becomes optional. Today we're going to show you exactly what that moment looks like in real numbers, exactly what determines how fast you get there, and exactly what most people are doing right now that's pushing that date further into the future without realizing it. Because the crossover point isn't a mystery. It has a formula. It has a date. And once you see what moves that date, you will never think about your money the same way again. My name is Nick, and I'm obsessed with the specific decisions that separate people who build serious wealth from people who earn serious incomes and end up with neither. Subscribe if you want more of the actual math. Let's get into it. Let's start with what the crossover point actually is, because the concept sounds simple and the implications are anything but. Every month you do two things with your money. You earn it, and you save some of it. The part you save goes into accounts: a 401k, a brokerage, an IRA. And those accounts earn returns. The returns are a percentage of however much you've already accumulated, which means in the early years, when you haven't accumulated much, the returns are small. You're doing most of the heavy lifting yourself. You're contributing $800 a month, and your portfolio is generating maybe $200 a month in returns. You are working much harder than your money is. But here's what changes. Every year you save, the balance grows. And every year the balance grows, the returns on that balance grow with it. The $200 a month in portfolio returns becomes $300, then $500, then $900. Meanwhile, your contributions stay roughly the same. Let's say you're putting in $1,000 a month consistently, and at some point those two lines cross. The line representing what your portfolio earns in a month crosses the line representing what you're putting in. Your money is now generating more wealth than your labor is. That's the crossover point. That's the exact moment we're talking about. And what happens after that crossing is what most people don't sit with long enough to actually feel. After the crossover, the gap doesn't stay equal. It accelerates. The portfolio keeps growing, the returns keep compounding, and your contributions, which were the dominant force for years, become a progressively smaller share of your total wealth accumulation. By the time you're 10 years past the crossover point, your contributions might represent 20% of your annual wealth growth. The other 80% is your money working, not you. This isn't a theory. This is arithmetic. The reason it feels abstract is that most people never see it applied to their own numbers in a way that makes it real. So let's make it real. Meet Marcus. He's 34. He makes $88,000 a year, which is a solid income by most measures. He's been contributing to his 401k since he was 27. He puts in 8% of his salary, which with his employer's 3% match comes to 11% total. About $9,680 a year, or roughly $807 a month. He has a Roth IRA he contributes $300 a month to. So his total monthly investment contribution is about $1,107. Marcus has been doing this consistently for 7 years. At an 8% average annual return, his total portfolio at 34 is approximately $118,000. Here's what that means in practical terms. At 8% annual return, his $118,000 generates about $9,440 in returns per year. That's $787 a month in investment returns alone, without Marcus doing anything. Without Marcus showing up to work. Without Marcus making a decision. The money is just there, compounding. Marcus contributes $1,107 a month. His portfolio currently generates $787 a month. He's not at the crossover yet. He's doing about 58% of the heavy lifting, and his money is doing 42%. But here's what's remarkable about where Marcus is. He's not far. At his current trajectory, with consistent contributions and 8% average returns, Marcus hits the crossover point at approximately age 38, 4 years from now. In 4 years, his portfolio will be generating more than $1,107 a month in returns, and that number will keep growing every year for the rest of his life. But here's the variable that nobody talks about enough. The crossover point isn't just a function of how much you contribute, it's primarily a function of how early you started and how much you've accumulated. And those two things are connected to a third thing that has nothing to do with your income. They're connected to your savings rate, not your gross income. Your savings rate. This is the part that should rearrange how you think about your financial life, because the personal finance industry has sold you a story about income that is technically true and practically misleading. The story is earn more, save more, retire better. And yes, mechanically that's accurate. Higher income gives you more dollars to potentially save. But the key word is potentially, because research consistently shows that as income rises, savings rates don't automatically rise with them. In many cases, they fall. The American Institute of CPAs has published data showing that households earning between $75,000 and $100,000 save a smaller percentage of their income than households earning $50,000 to $75,000 in some spending categories. Not a smaller dollar amount, a smaller percentage. Because lifestyle inflation, the automatic expansion of spending to match income, absorbs the difference before it reaches an investment account. Here's the mathematical reality of savings rate versus the crossover point, and I want you to actually sit with these numbers. 2 people. Same age, 30, same income, $85,000 a year. Person A saves 10% of their income, $8,500 a year, or about $708 a month. Person B saves 20%, $17,000 a year, about $1,417 a month. At 8% annual returns, Person A hits the crossover point the moment their portfolio generates more than $708 a month. At approximately age 44, Person B hits it at approximately age 38, 6 years earlier. But the retirement difference isn't 6 years, because after the crossover, the compounding accelerates differently. Person B, who hit the crossover earlier, has a substantially larger base compounding for longer. By 60, Person A has roughly $2.1 million. Person B has roughly $3.8 million. Same income, same 30 years. The only difference was 10 percentage points of savings rate, and those 10 percentage points are almost certainly sitting somewhere in lifestyle spending right now. Not in a vault, not unavailable. Just allocated somewhere that will never compound. The crossover point doesn't care how much you earn. It cares how aggressively you accumulate. And accumulation speed is determined almost entirely by the gap between what you make and what you spend. Now, there's a layer to this that goes beyond the math, and it's the one that explains why so many people who know all of this still don't do it. Because Marcus knows he should save more. He reads the content, he understands compound interest, he could probably sketch out the crossover concept on a napkin if you explained it to him, and still his savings rate is 15%, not 25%. Still, he bought the new car. Still, he upgraded the apartment when he got the raise at 31. The reason has everything to do with what economists call time inconsistency, the brain's systematic preference for the present version of yourself over the future version. It's not laziness, it's not stupidity, it's a hardwired cognitive bias that treats future rewards as fundamentally less real than present ones, regardless of their actual size. The future $3.8 million is a number on a spreadsheet. The $400 a month that would have gotten you there faster, that's the weekend trip, the nicer grocery store, the car that actually feels good to drive. One of those things exists right now. The other exists in a model, and the financial industry, not maliciously, just structurally, is built entirely around making the present version of your money feel more available and more yours than the future version. Monthly payments make expensive things feel affordable. Lifestyle content makes the upgraded version of your life feel like the natural next step. Credit makes the present limitless. Compounding, meanwhile, is invisible for years. It doesn't send you a notification. It doesn't have a showroom. It doesn't have a salesperson. So how do you actually close the gap between knowing the math and living the math? The first mechanism is making the crossover point real and personal, not theoretical. Abstract compound interest doesn't move people. Your specific crossover date does. Here's how you calculate yours. Take your current total investment portfolio value. 401k, IRA, brokerage, everything. Multiply it by 0.08. That's your approximate annual portfolio return at 8%. Divide by 12. That's what your money currently earns per month without you doing anything. Now calculate your total monthly investment contributions. Everything going in. The moment those two numbers are equal is your crossover point. If your monthly return is already higher than your contributions, you've already crossed it. Most people reading this haven't, but more people are closer than they think. Once you know the gap, you can calculate your crossover date. At your current portfolio value and contribution rate, how many years until your monthly return exceeds your monthly contribution? Run it with 8% annual return, compounding monthly. Most financial calculators will do this in under 2 minutes. When you see an actual year, not someday, not retirement, but a specific year, the decision calculus changes. It stops being about sacrifice and starts being about timing. Marcus, at 34, is 4 years away. If he increases his savings rate by 5 percentage points, redirecting about $367 a month from spending into investments, he closes that gap to 2.5 years. He crosses at 36 instead of 38. That doesn't just feel different, it compounds differently. The extra 18 months of accelerated post-crossover growth adds approximately $290,000 to his portfolio by 65. Not because he invested $290,000, because he moved the crossover date by a year and a half and let the math run longer. The second mechanism is understanding what actually moves the crossover date, because there are 3 levers and most people only pull one. The first lever is contributions. This is the one everyone focuses on. Save more, get there faster. True, but often limited by the sense that there's nothing left to redirect. We've already covered why that feeling isn't always accurate. The second lever is existing balance. This one is counterintuitive. If you have $50,000 sitting in a savings account earning 4.5%, which is a reasonable high-yield savings rate right now, that's $2,250 a year in interest. Fine. But if that $50,000 were in a diversified equity index fund returning 8%, it's $4,000 a year. And more importantly, it's building the base that generates your post-crossover acceleration. Emergency fund aside, and you should keep 3 to 6 months of expenses liquid, cash above that threshold is a direct drag on your crossover date. Every dollar sitting in a savings account above your emergency fund threshold is a dollar not compounding toward the moment your money outpaces your labor. The third lever is return rate, and this is the one that has the most nuance, because chasing higher returns is how people end up in crypto speculation or concentrated stock bets that wipe out years of progress in a quarter. The goal isn't to maximize return, it's to get and stay close to market returns reliably over a long period. Historically, a low-cost total market index fund has delivered approximately 7 to 10% annualized, depending on the time period you measure. The investor who earns 8% consistently for 30 years doesn't just beat the investor who earns 12% for 5 years and 3% for 5 years and 14% for 5 years and then panics and goes to cash. They annihilate them. Consistency is the lever, not optimization. So the levers in order of practical impact: contributions first, existing cash allocation second, consistency of return third. Most people reverse the order. They spend hours researching which funds to be in and 10 minutes deciding their savings rate. The research time should roughly reflect the impact, and savings rate has the highest impact of the 3 by a margin that isn't close. Let's go back to Marcus because I want to show you what the crossover point actually looks like from the inside. Because it's not a celebration. It doesn't arrive with a notification or a letter from a brokerage. It's quiet. And the people who miss it, who work past it and through it without ever registering that it happened, are the ones who never change how they relate to their income. Marcus at 38. His portfolio is now roughly $190,000. At 8% annual return, it's generating about $15,200 a year. $1,267 a month. His monthly contributions are still $1,107. He has crossed. His money is now working harder than he is. What does Marcus actually experience? On a Tuesday, his portfolio statement shows a monthly return of $1,267. He deposited $1,107. He made $160 more from having money than he made from putting money in. It doesn't feel like freedom yet. It doesn't feel like retirement is suddenly possible. It feels like a weird line item on a statement. But here's what changes in the years after. At 40, his portfolio is $240,000. Monthly return, $1,600. At 45, it's $380,000. Monthly return, $2,533. At 50, it's $580,000. Monthly return, $3,867. At 55, $880,000. Monthly return, $5,867. His contributions are still $1,107 a month. His money is making $5,867. He is contributing about 16% of his total monthly investment growth. The other 84% is capital doing what capital does when you give it enough time to accelerate. At 60, Marcus's portfolio is approximately $1.35 million. Monthly return at 8%, $9,000. He hasn't contributed meaningfully to his own wealth accumulation in a decade. His money did it. And the interesting thing, the thing that separates Marcus in version 2 from Marcus in version 1, is that he didn't do anything extraordinary to get here. He didn't start a business. He didn't pick the right stock. He found his crossover date, moved it 2 years earlier by redirecting $367 a month, and then let time do the work that time was always going to do for anyone patient enough to let it. There's one more thing I want to address before we close, because there's a version of this conversation that sounds like it's for people who have everything sorted and are just optimizing. And I know that's not everyone watching this. Some of you are looking at your current portfolio, and the crossover math feels like it's describing someone else's life. You're starting later, you have debt, you had years where contributing wasn't possible, and the crossover point feels not like something 4 years away, but something that might not happen before 60, if it happens at all. Here's what I want you to take from this. The crossover point is not an all-or-nothing event. It's a spectrum. Every dollar you redirect toward investment moves your crossover date. Even a small move earlier compounds meaningfully over time. The person who shifts their crossover date from 55 to 52 isn't just retiring 3 years earlier in the obvious sense. They're giving 3 more years of post-crossover compounding to run. 3 years where their portfolio is doing 80% of the work instead of them. That math is worth something. Depending on portfolio size at that point, it could be worth $200,000 or $400,000 or more by 65. The question is never whether you can reach a perfect version of this. The question is whether you can move the date, because every moved date has compounding behind it, and compounding doesn't care about perfect circumstances. It cares about time. Here's where this leaves us. There is an exact moment when your money starts working harder than you do. It has a formula. It has a year attached to it. For some of you, it's in 4 years. For some, it's in 12. For some of you, and I mean this seriously, it may have already happened and you haven't registered it yet because nobody told you what you were looking for. The people who reach that moment and feel it, who understand what it means that their portfolio just out-earned their contribution for the first time, who track the widening gap year after year as their capital does more and their labor does less. Those people make different decisions. Not because they're smarter, because the abstract became real. Because a number on a statement connected to a framework that made it mean something. And once it means something, you protect it differently. Your crossover date is calculable. It's movable, and the distance between where you are right now and that date is smaller than it looks if you understand which levers actually move it. Run the numbers tonight, find your date, and then decide what you'd like to do with that information.